So he is a magnetic force that we see a follower in Sen Guptaji. And he is one of the youngest television journalists with a prime time interview show out back on Bloomberg TV. Can you believe he is hardly 28.9 years old and he's trying to do so many things for the society? We all need to give our support and motivate him to do what is right for the society and bring all the Hindus together under one umbrella. Sen Guptaji, over to you.
Oh, by the way, I'm no longer 28. When I began, it was slightly down the path. Anyway. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi Narayanji. I'd like to now invite Avi to hand over the bouquet to the chief guest.
Very much. Thanks, Bob.
I'd also like to invite Lakshmi Narayanji to.
This color is important.
Yeah.
We all need to work towards this.
इसमें बैठेंगे
Thank you so much. And without taking too much of your time, I'd like to now invite our speaker of the day, Mr. Sehunol Sengupta, to give us a view on the book, Being Indian.
Thanks. I wanted to see strange head popping up. Good evening. Thank you very much. Namaskar. All of you came in this cold evening. I'm very grateful to you. I believe this is the IBC's first program in the Washington DC area and in this entire region, and I'm delighted to be the first speaker of this series. I'll be doing a whole range of talks in America this year on the subject of my book and many of the other subjects that all of us are concerned about. But this being Washington, this being center of power in a sense, not just in America but around the world, I want to begin with a simple idea. And that simple idea is that for several years now, one thing has particularly bothered me, which I want to share with you. People tell me all the time that there is a civilizational battle to be won, right? And I hear this all the time. Wherever I go, people tell me a civilizational battle is to be won. And I always tell them, wonderful, that's a great thing. So who's going to fight this battle? So the response always from the crowd is, and if you excuse me, I should move to Hindi because usually they say this to me in Hindi. They always tell me, "Koi kuch nahi kar raha hai." Why isn't somebody doing something, right? And I've heard this literally countless. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard this. Hundreds and hundreds of times. Every place I go to, people tell me somebody is not doing something. It's always an esoteric somebody who's not doing an esoteric something. My answer to that always is, who is that somebody? And what is that somebody supposed to do, right? So I was sharing this with a monk of the Ramakrishna Mission. Some of you may know I've been associated, my family has been associated with the Ramakrishna Mission for 3 generations now. And I was saying this to a very erudite, Ramakrishna Mission monks, many of you might know, are extremely erudite, highly educated, often in, with great intellectual ability. And I was sharing this with one of the monks that, Swamiji, wherever I go, people tell me somebody's not doing something. So he laughed and said, you should quote Barack Obama to them. And I told him, what do you mean? Why should I quote Barack Obama to them? He said, don't you remember? Obama said, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So if there is a civilizational battle to be won, ladies and gentlemen, I put to you humbly that we are the ones we've been waiting for. There is no other koi who will do kuch. There is only us. And we will have to do whatever that needs to be done. So some of us are trying to do a little bit. And I have an interesting thought on how to do this. And again, I believe the policy for people to follow in this great quote-unquote civilizational battle is the Dale Carnegie principle. Now you will say, what on earth does Dale Carnegie have to do with our quote-unquote civilizational battle? I truly believe we are at that inflection point today where what we really need to do is win friends and influence people. And we will not win friends and influence people, ladies and gentlemen, by only anger. It has never happened in the history of mankind. It will never happen. If you truly want to win friends and influence people, if you want to reach out to a new range of people around the world who will be convinced by the power of your ideas in education, you must do it with the one thing, the one lesson, the one ultimate lesson which I feel Hinduism teaches us. That at the end, there is only joy. Sat Chit Ananda. There is happiness. That the final point of intellectual rigor must conclude not in anger, but in joy. And it is only with joy and happiness and the power of ideas that we will be able to move this battle forward. Why do I say this? I say this because we are at a unique inflection point where every progressive idea you can think of, we are on the right side of that progressive idea. Every progressive idea. You all live in America, so let me mention a few things, right? In an American university where I study at the moment, I keep hearing about this big conversation about the right to choice, right? Essentially an abortion conversation. What right does a woman have upon her body, right? What would be the Hindu argument, ladies and gentlemen, to this? The natural Hindu argument to this is that a woman not only has right about her own body, we believe that the woman is, or the feminine energy is, one of the most important powers that runs the universe. How can we deny that a woman has right over her own body? There is no denying that. It is our argument. Let's take another example on gender and sexuality, right? So much, I mean, I'm so delighted.
From that example, when you quote some anecdotal example
Of,
of Hinduism for the abortion?
Of abortion, an anecdotal abortion. Well, I would like to, I don't have an anecdotal example to quote to you about why we don't or do support abortion, but I would like to see an anecdotal example of anybody who says that we are against abortion. Do you have an anecdotal example of somebody or anything that you have read which says that we actually do not support abortion?
Okay, I mean, that's a counter argument.
It is,
Yeah,
but
I
it is
think
the only
let-
counter
let-
argument.
let's-
Let
It is the only valid counter argument. Because, no, but this is very important. Let's take this. This is a very important point. Because this idea that there has to be something written somewhere, which is from which knowledge flows, is a flawed idea, and anyway, it's not a Hindu idea. Did Ramakrishna Paramhans get his power, if you believe that he was powerful, or his spiritual ideas, because there were three things he could quote? It's a fundamentally flawed idea. It's an idea that we must challenge, and challenge deeply. So unless you show me evidence that in these three places, and anyway, even if there is textual evidence like that, and there isn't in this case, because clearly you can't show it, even if there is, it has to be countered and questioned and studied and researched. And I don't think in this particular case, which is the case of abortion, there is any such example. So that's number one. Number two, sexuality. Where is the debate on Hinduism in sexuality?
I mean, let me just add to
Let's
that.
take
Sir,
Sorry to interrupt. We'll take questions. We'll be taking written questions, and I'll be circulating the flashcards and pens.
I'm happy to.
No.
the
let's-
format of the program is, he's gonna talk, I'm sure most of us are knowledgeable and intelligent and lot of questions. There is a time after the talk, and it's, Sabha Maryada, to let continue to the, not interrupt. Once it is done, he has all the time. You can write it down, talk with him. And it-
So we were on the topic of sexuality, and this is very interesting to me. This epistemological power that some people have in Hinduism, but we'll talk about that when the time comes. But let's go to that question of sexuality. What part of the self searching for an identity marker in sexuality is Hinduism troubled with? Nothing. Nothing. We have one problematic law, which is a colonial law, which was never there in our country. There is no dispute about this. It's a law that only came to our country with the British, and it's a law that everybody agrees, everybody who's sensible agrees, should go. We have no dispute on this. We have absolute, Hinduism has no dispute on this. Hindus have no dispute on this. Because finally, I truly believe a religion, like many other things, is only as good or bad as the people who practice it. If the people who practice a religion consistently display a particular negative attitude, then the religion itself is out of context. So sexuality, we have no dispute. Let's take the third big debate, and in America you keep hearing this, and I have tweeted often to the scientist Richard Dawkins about this. I haven't got an answer yet, but perhaps an answer will come soon. Science. There is a debate around the world that atheism is better because it accommodates scientific rationale. How can we in the 21st century, when there are in Silicon Valley people building gods of artificial intelligence or artificial AI gods, how can we reconcile with any religious principle which does not fit into the scientific parameter as we understand it today, right? Does Hinduism have any problem with any scientific evidence of any kind? No. And who's the person who said this? Years and years ago, Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda famously said that the one marker through which one prism through which you should look at a religion is if you can apply scientific principles on that religion. And he said, and only he could have said this, if any religion you find does not fit into principles of logic and scientific rationale, then you do not have, not only do you not have to accept that religion, you actually should not follow it at all. We have no dispute with science. So three of the biggest battles that surround us, sexuality, gender, and scientific reasoning, we have no dispute on any of these battles. And therefore I truly believe today, this is the point of view, this is the platform on which Hinduism, the Hindu argument will have to stand. It's an argument that has to stand on what is contextual to us today. I am not suggesting what was contextual to us a long time ago is not relevant. But I'm saying if we have to practice it today and talk about it to people today, surely it must fit into the context today. There is no point telling people 5,000 years ago we were great. This is not to say that 5,000 years ago we were not great. But surely those arguments, if they have to be carried forward, they have to be in the context of today. And my argument to you is, in every platform or every direction of argument that you look at, the Hindu argument stands strong because it does not have any dispute with any of the biggest problems that we face today. Let's take one more example, environment. Let's not go by the example of India today, because India over the last 70 years, maybe before that, but especially in the last 70 years, has done innumerable harm to its own environment. Our rivers are polluted. The city I come from in Delhi, we can barely breathe anymore, but that's not just in Delhi, in many other cities and so on and so forth, right? That is a logistical problem we need to solve. That's a governance issue we need to solve. But there is absolutely no dispute that environment is one of the critical pillars to the Hindu imagination. There is no dispute, nobody disputes that. That environment is one of the fundamental pillars on which Hindu imagination stands. There is no dispute. The most basic way of looking at it, of course, is this idea that we quote-unquote worship natural things, whether it's a river, or it's a tree, or it's a landscape, and so on and so forth, right? And all of those ideas have perfect, and so a friend of mine said this beautifully, and I want to repeat this to you, has organic meaning today. It's a word we all love to bandy about, but the Hindu imagination is the organic imagination. It is the imagination of going closer to the earth, to understanding what the earth is all about, to understanding what comes out of the earth, to understanding how you nurture that earth, to understanding why that earth is so valuable to you, and naturally worshipping it. Because if you understand all these things about the earth, you develop a sort of attachment and devotion to that landscape, to that geography, and that's why Diana Eck, for instance, wrote A Sacred Geography, talking about how in the Hindu imagination, the geography itself is sacred. And the geography is sacred because every bit of that geography is sacred. A mountain, a hill, a river, a tree, a little, a hillock, a hamlet, a village, everything is sacred. And that's why the construction, in a sense, of the Hindu imagination, even with its holy places, is a cartological imagination, if you know what I mean. It is a mapping of our spiritual imagination onto geography. We have mapped out our entire spiritual imagination onto the landscape. That's why we say Bharat Mata. That's why we say this is our holy land. Why is the land holy? Because there is a coming together of our cartological imagination, our idea of what our geography looks like, onto what our idea of divine really is. It comes together. That's why you will see that's why the idea of pilgrimage is so important to us. Right? When I was a boy and I got my Diksha at Ramakrishna Mission at the age of 10, we used to talk about, I remember, of the idea of a pilgrimage. What is a pilgrimage? Why should you be a pilgrim, right? What do you achieve by being a pilgrim? Why should you traverse long distances? Of course, you traverse long distances over large tracts of land to set yourself in the frame of mind for devotion, basically. That you go through a particular experience which sets your mind in a particular direction for you to be truly devoted. But there is another reason. You traverse landscape. It builds a connection with you, the devotee, with that landscape. Because there's this beautiful phrase that I mentioned in my book about how the geography of India has been mapped by the footsteps of pilgrims. That the footsteps of pilgrims brought about the first imagination of India. Because as the pilgrims progresses, so to speak, they are not only moving to their idea of God, they're also developing with every step a deep and intimate connection with that land, with every step, with the path that they follow, with the things that they see, the places that they rest, the landscape that they observe, the seasons that they go through. It's all an intimately connected, intertwined thing. So if you take all of these pillars, whether it's gender or whether it's sexuality, whether it's the idea of the maintaining the environment, whatever are these ideas, whatever are these topics, whatever are these issues that our modern world deals with, you realize that the Hindus don't have a conflict. We do not have an argument against any of this rationale. But then you will ask, why is there so much misunderstanding about Hinduism then? Because we have lacked that one thing that is absolutely urgent for any civilization to survive, which is the power of telling a better story. We have to question, what is the story that we tell about ourselves? What are these stories that we have told about ourselves? And how have we told them? In what way and shape have we told them? What form have we told them? Right? One of my friends who recently wrote a book mentioned something really interesting. And I had a long conversation with him, and he said, millions of Hindus every day utter the Gayatri Mantra. What is the story we have told the world about the Gayatri Mantra? It's a very interesting question. If somebody were to come up to you today and say, well, you every day say something called the Gayatri Mantra, what on earth is this? Why do you say it? Right? What answer would you give to that person? What is the answer that you would give to that person on why? And remember, it is with these mantras and these little rituals that we know that we're an unbroken civilization. What is an unbroken civilization? That today what we are doing is exactly or near exactly the same thing that our ancestors did thousands of years ago. That's why we're an unbroken civilization, right? That's why we're not a dead civilization. That's why we're not a dead language and so on and so forth, right? Okay. So then what is the story we have told about the Gayatri Mantra? Asking for knowledge. But what is that knowledge? Where does that knowledge come from? Sorry? Within. And we'll come to within in just a moment. My friend had a very interesting correlated answer which I want to present to you. Which is that when you pray, the act of prayer, what is the act of prayer? Why do you pray? Why should you pray at all? Right? It's a very interesting question. Why should I pray? Why do I need to pray at all? What meaning does prayer add to my life at all? Right? If you look at the history of prayer, and I hope to write a book about this, so I'm doing some research. If you look at the history of prayer, prayer as humankind has known it, there are 2 or 3 things that usually in prayer that people ask, that human beings have asked for as long as human beings have existed, and as long as they've sought the divine. What do they ask for? They usually ask for protection. And you can see where that would have come from. That would have come from the time when human beings felt that they were at the mercy of nature. So something would have to protect them. Right? They ask for prosperity. When society became more organized, they realized that there was rich and poor. So you ask for prosperity. Right? You ask to be protected, you ask for prosperity, you ask for benevolence. That's the other thing that you usually ask for in prayer. That somebody will be benevolent, the divine will be benevolent to you. The very interesting thing about Gayatri Mantra is that it asks for none of these things. It asks for something called illumination. Now you'll ask, what is this illumination? And as the lady there said, it is essentially intelligence. It's the ability to see. And there's this beautiful part in Egg's book where she talks about darshan. Why does the Hindu go to the temple? Not necessarily for anything else but darshan. The ability to see. Now, one is of course see, literally see the mukti, but also an ability to see from a much deeper, more intricate place. That you have the ability to truly see. And the Gayatri Mantra has that. It teaches us that what we are seeking is an ability to see. And my argument in the book and even otherwise is that if you construct a map of the Hindu imagination, you will see this theme come up again and again. What do we seek? We seek only an ability to see. Because remember, Hinduism's core principle is, they told Vivekananda when he came to America that, and he was giving a lot of lectures and so on and so forth. They said, but what about heaven and hell? Right? Where is heaven and hell in all of this? Right? You're saying this, that, whatever. Where is heaven and hell? And he famously said, I'm not here to take you to heaven. I'm here to get you out of heaven. I'm here to take you out of this race of heaven and hell. I'm here to give you liberation. I'm here to give you mukti. I'm here to set you free from even the anxiety of heaven and hell. Even not only your day-to-day anxieties, but even the final anxiety of heaven and hell. I'm here to set you free. And that is such a powerful idea in a world which is so hungry for identity, because the Hindu imagination sets you free. The Hindu imagination says, your construct of God is your construct of God. I was just listening to this wonderful lecture by Swami Sarvapriyananda of the Vedanta Society of New York in Columbia, and we were talking after that, and he said something really beautiful which I want to repeat to you. He said, well, if somebody came to Vivekananda and said, there is God, he would say, that's wonderful, I mean, we are very happy there is God, that's a wonderful thing. Say somebody came up to him and said, no, I completely disagree with everything that you say, there is definitely no God. He would probably say, okay, well, that's all right. And you would say, how can that be true? And he said, that's true, because he would go on to say, whether there is God or not, there is no disputing the fact that you are here. here you are, you can't dispute that. You can dispute that there is God, there is no God, but you cannot dispute, like none of you can dispute that I can't dispute, that I am here, you are here. And the idea is that are you here completely? Are you here totally? Are you here with your full consciousness? Are you here in the truest sense of yourself? And if you are there in the truest sense of yourself, that itself is enough to begin the journey. We will come to God or no God and whenever we come to it. But if you manage to just be there completely, totally, that's enough to begin the journey. I just sometimes think what a wonderful way of talking about the divine in a world so torn by rigid, static imaginations of the divine. Right? What a truly empowering way of talking about the divine. I am a Hindu, ladies and gentlemen, and let me share this with you. I am not a Hindu because my parents were Hindus. I am not a Hindu because my grandparents were Hindus. I asked myself at some point in my life, why on earth should I be a Hindu? I'm not an engineer because my father was an engineer, right? I'm not a doctor because my grandparents were doctors. So why on earth should I be a Hindu because my ancestors were Hindus? I should be what I truly believe is relevant to my life, which speaks directly to me. And I am a Hindu today because Hinduism has spoken directly to me. It has given me the language, the semantics, the imagination to imagine a world where freedom is truly possible. I am a Hindu because it shows me an imagination where freedom truly, in its most fundamental sense, is a possibility. And I believe that the only thing we must seek out of life is freedom. What else would you seek? And I'm a Hindu today because this is the imagination that Hinduism has provided. This is the framework, this is the architecture, this is the language, this is the grammar that Hinduism has provided me. To the ability to talk about freedom in its truest, most sublime sense. A lot of people ask me wherever I go to talk, well, what about idols? Right? What about the caste system? Right? What about all sorts of other things? What about dowry system and so on and so forth? Now, you can go into arguments, and I've had long conversations. You can see this wonderful conversation I did with Dr. Kapil Kapoor of JNU on the caste system. If you go on YouTube, you will see it as a series of on this book called Being Hindu. Those are theological arguments about what castes used to be, and he has this wonderful example where he says, well, you know, everybody says that the man as imagined by Manu was standing up, but actually he was lying down. And I think that's a really clever way of putting it, right? He says, well, it's only when the man is, if you say the man is standing down, then there is a hierarchy. But what if in the imagination the man wasn't standing up at all? The man was lying down. We can go into all of these debates. I think most people would not go into these debates because most people don't. I mean, it's like saying everybody will be a philosopher. It's not possible. It has never been possible in any society. Perhaps the more accessible way of looking at it is there will always be societal ills in every society. In every society. There was racism at some point in America, there was slave trade in the Arab world at some point. There are all sorts of problems in every society. Why? Because again, I mean, if you go back to the Vedanta, they would say, well, because man himself is problematic, right? If we were all centered and at peace, we would not have these problems, right? But these are societal problems for us to fix. I'm more concerned about the imagination of this thing called Hinduism. And why does it need to survive in the future? And what platform does it give us in the future to understand our lives as we know it today and the life we will have in the future? I mean, I asked one of the monks recently, you know, what are they going to do when there's an AI God? And he said, well, I mean, you know, you're talking about an artificial intelligence God. I'm sure we will find artificial intelligence prayers to pray to an artificial intelligence God. And the people who want to worship that artificial intelligence God will construct for themselves artificial intelligence prayers to worship that artificial intelligence God. Makes perfect sense. Our concern is after worshipping quote unquote the artificial intelligence God, how are they going to behave? Are they going to be kind? Are they going to be loving? Are they going to be compassionate? These are our concerns. That they have constructed artificial intelligence prayers for an artificial intelligence God, well, they have. What are you going to do about it? Right? And this architecture of openness. But again, see, I mean, you know, it's very, in a couple of debates, a couple of people came up to me and said, oh, but you know, if we say we are open, then we will be attacked from each side and we will be subsumed and we will be destroyed and so on and so forth, right? So I want to qualify this openness with a wonderful story that Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to say. So there is a story when there is a sadhu, a monk, who's walking by a path, right? And he suddenly sees a snake, and the snake has risen its fangs and is about to bite him. And the monk gets very irritated and tells the snake, what sort of behavior is this? Right? I have done no harm to you. I am just passing by. You're trying to attack me. You know, as a living being, and remember Hinduism is concerned with life itself. So as a living being, is this the way you should behave? Right? So the monk chastises the snake, goes away. The snake starts away and goes away. A few days later, the monk is passing by again and suddenly sees the snake battered and beaten up and bloodied and, you know, lying on the road. And the monk says, what has happened to you? Like, you know, here you were a fierce snake trying to bite people and now you're bloodied and battered and so on and so forth. How did this happen to you? So the snake says, but you only told me I should never raise my fangs at anybody. So then I didn't raise my fangs at anybody. Then they saw me and they beat me up and they thrashed me. What do I do? So Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to laugh. He used to laugh a lot. Unlike, you know, many people who want to save our civilization today, he was not very angry. He used to laugh a lot. This is a great sign. I have always seen monks very happy. So I think that's a very good sign when somebody smiles and laughs at them. So the monk tells the snake, I told you not to bite, but I never told you not to raise your fangs. I think there is a vital and very intricate level of understanding in the fact that a defense is not always constructing only by shouting or only by trigger. A defense is constructed in a battle of ideas. And to present an idea, and to truly present an idea well, that many people identify with it, I put to you humbly that the source of that may not always just be anger. That's my humble submission. It may be anger, but it may not just be anger. And I think that parable has great lesson for everybody who thinks there is a great battle to be fought and so on and so forth. Right? And if you ask me, this great battle that we are supposedly fighting, what is this battle? Let's deconstruct it a little bit, right? Because everybody talks about it. At the end of the day, I would argue that the battle for ideas has always gone on as long as human beings have existed. What is a better idea? This is not just only about Hinduism or this or that. And I would argue this is not only just about religion. It's about ideas. At the end of the day, what is religion? Religion is anything that makes us be better human beings. And what makes us better human beings? Better ideas. Now these better ideas, where do they come from? Many people would say the best ideas come from a sense of the divine because it's the purest part of you. You're able to go down to the deepest and most sacred part of you. You're able to understand things at a very subliminal level. You're able to absorb it. You're able to talk about it. And therefore you become a better self. If you ask the Dalai Lama, he would say the Buddhism is what? Buddhism is nothing but kindness. So somebody asked me recently in my last talk that the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, Buddhism is kindness. He's always asked, what is Buddhism? He says it's kindness. Right? So what is Hinduism? Right? It is happiness.
What is the first line?
Buddhism is kindness.
Kindness.
Kindness. So whenever you ask His Holiness the Dalai Lama, what is Buddhism? At its very fundamental nature, right? Beyond all everything else, At its most fundamental nature, what is it? And he always says it's kindness, it's compassion, right? It's compassion for your fellow human beings. And I put it humbly to you that what is Hinduism? Hinduism is joy. And if we are not able to bring that joy into what we do and how we present our ideas, we are not going to win. I don't know, frankly, I don't know what winning means. But whatever winning suggests to you, I leave it to you to construct what is winning. We are not going to win, right? I want to tell you a little story. And since we're in America, my book ends with this story. How many of you read Ayn Rand? Anybody's read Ayn Rand? Childhood. Everybody's read Ayn Rand. Excellent. There is a great Hindu deconstruction of Ayn Rand to be done. I humbly put to you. What is it? How many of you read The Fountainhead? You read The Fountainhead? Everybody's read The Fountainhead. The Fountainhead begins with this wonderful image, and it's a star. I mean, I also read it as a student. It's a striking image. I mean, it blows your mind. It's about this utterly fascinating, beautiful, because that's the only word I can think of, man standing naked on these jagged rocks and looking at water, right? I mean, it's one of the most primal depictions of, man in its most natural self. And here is this man who has, perfect aquiline nose and blah, blah, and whatever, and he's standing there and he's looking at water, and he's laughing. That portion ends with the line begins by saying Howard Roark stood on the cliff or whatever, and he laughed, right? I of course read it as a child and I was very impressed by it, and then a lot of people told me as I grew up and as I did my economics and started writing about business and economics that neoliberalism is this horrible thing and it destroyed the world and blah blah. All very well. So then when I heard those two things, my own imagination of Ayn Rand and the critique of neoliberalism, I decided to do a Hindu deconstruction of that imagery. What is the Hindu deconstruction of that imagery? What is being told to us in that imagery? What is being told to us is, here is a man in supreme control who can conquer anything, who in fact has conquered nature. It's an imagery of conquest. Here is a man supremely in power who has conquered nature. The question, faced with that, the immediate Hindu question to that would be, to what purpose has that man conquered nature? Why did he feel the need to conquer nature? And the more you deconstruct that, and I think he just said that, you will land up with this wonderful 3-letter word which is not God but ego. Why did that man want to conquer that nature at all? Let me tell you another story about this. It so happened supposedly that when Porus, the great Indian king, was about to do battle with Alexander of Macedon, Alexander the Great is most of us, not so great, says somebody. Well, Alexander of Macedon has reached the banks of the river Indus and he's going to conquer the entire known world. Alexander knows that if he goes beyond this river and conquers all that lies beyond it, he will be the greatest hero ever. Right? So he's on the banks of the Indus and he's on a horse. He comes to a tree and there is a sadhu sitting under the tree. Again, a naked sadhu, a naked man sitting under the tree, meditating with his eyes closed. He's meditating. So Alexander has never seen something like this. He gets off his horse and he goes up to the man and says, "What on earth are you doing?" And the sadhu opens his eyes and smiles at him and says, "What on earth are you doing?" So Alexander says, "What do you mean? I'm Alexander of Macedon. I'm conquering the world. What else would I do? Right? I'm conquering the world." And he says, "But what are you doing?" And the sadhu says, "I'm conquering myself." And both of them laugh at each other. Because you see, these are two diametric opposite ways of imagining the world and the universe, right? Alexander has been taught that there is only one life. What do you do in that life? If you are truly great, and if you can achieve great things, when you die, you will cross a certain river, and you will go into the land of heroes, where you will meet the great heroes, Hercules and Odysseus and all of these people, right? Because that's where the heroes reside. What is the sadhu being taught? The sadhu has been taught, which Vivekananda knew hundreds and thousands of years later, that it's all a cycle. And the only purpose is for you to understand better, to figure it out, to understand yourself better. And what will you get at the end of it? You will not go to a land of heroes, because there might not be a land of heroes. You will escape from the anxiety of wanting to go to a land of heroes. You will escape from the very anxiety that pushes you towards attaining that land of heroes. That is the purpose that the sadhu has understood. You know, I read somewhere that this wonderful story that, you know, they keep saying that, you know, Everest was conquered and this was conquered and that was conquered. So Mount Meru, the great Mount Meru. So it is said when the first ancient man went to conquer Mount Meru, when said I will conquer it, and he reached the summit and wanted to put a flag to say I have conquered it. When he reached the summit, he realized there were hundreds. As long as he could see, the mountain was full of flags. So he realized that there's always someone who has been there before. I think the Hindu imagination teaches you the humility to understand that there's always someone who has been there before. Even though all of us think that we are the first people, and therefore we must get credit, there is always somewhere there, someone who has been there before. I would love to open this up now to have a conversation and take some questions on whatever you think might be worth having a conversation.
And
Thank
also
you very
same
much.
motivation of giving the questions and answers.
Really, I'm here, sir.
Limited time so that we all came, like everybody should be given a chance for one
Don't worry,
question.
sir.